There is a specific, physical weight that settles in the center of the chest the moment a difficulty arises. For most, the instinct is to disperse this weight, to vocalize, to signal distress, to seek regulation through another nervous system. But for you, the reflex is inverted. The moment the stressor hits, a financial gap, a medical scare, a relational fracture, the walls of the internal world do not open, they thicken. You feel a sudden, sharp contraction, a physiological locking mechanism that seals the throat and stills the face. You might be sitting across from someone you trust. You hear them speaking about their day, their minor frustrations. You nod. You offer the correct, empathetic responses. The cadence of your voice remains steady. But mere inches beneath the surface, a catastrophe is unfolding. You are running simulations of ruin, calculating exits, or managing a profound grief. Yet the channel between that internal reality and your external voice is severed. It is not a choice you make in the moment. It is a precognitive override. You watch yourself perform normalcy. It feels like deception, but it isn't malicious. It is a containment strategy. You believe, on a cellular level, that allowing the chaos inside to spill out would not bring relief. It would bring contamination. You are holding the door shut against a flood, convinced that if you crack it open even an inch, the water will destroy the structure entirely. The silence is not peaceful. It is active, caloric, and heavy. It effectively separates you from the environment, creating a distinct form of loneliness that stems not from being alone, but from being unknown. And this mechanism protects a truth your nervous system is terrified to acknowledge. To the outside world, this containment looks remarkably like stability. Because you do not leak distress, others assume there is no distress to leak. You are frequently categorized as the low-maintenance friend, the rock of the family, or the stoic partner. These labels are intended as compliments, but they act as reinforcements for the cage. When people tell you, "I wish I could handle things as calmly as you do," they are effectively praising your dissociation. They are applauding the very mechanism that is isolating you. Because you present a surface that is smooth and unbroken, you become a magnet for the instability of others. People pour their chaos into you, unconsciously assuming that you have an infinite capacity to absorb it, simply because you never show signs of being full. They do not see the waterline rising, because you have become an expert at building higher levees. Conversely, when the silence persists too long, the interpretation shifts from admiration to frustration. Those closest to you begin to read the withholding not as strength, but as a lack of trust or emotional unavailability. They sense the glass wall. They may accuse you of being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. They probe with questions like, "What are you thinking?" or "Is something wrong?" In response, you likely offer a decoy. You present a small, manageable fraction of the truth, a minor annoyance, a vague fatigue, to satisfy their need for connection without exposing the core volatility. You manage their anxiety about your silence so you can return to the work of managing your own internal collapse. They accept the decoy and retreat, assuming that if the problem were truly catastrophic, you would say so. They operate on the assumption that expression scales with intensity. They do not understand that for you, the opposite is true. The more severe the threat, the quieter you become. They mistake your silence for peace, unaware that the energy required to maintain the facade is actively cannibalizing the resources needed to survive the crisis. The primary output of this sustained containment is not anger or sadness, but a specific, heavy variety of fatigue. It is a tiredness that sleep does not resolve because it is not born of physical exertion. It is born of continuous neural inhibition. To keep a crisis silent requires an immense active expenditure of energy. Biologically, the impulse to share distress is a survival signal, a call for the tribe to assist. To override this signal, your prefrontal cortex must constantly exert downward pressure on the limbic system, literally wrestling your own biology into submission every hour of every day. You are effectively living two simultaneous lives. There is the external life, where you pay bills, attend meetings, and smile at neighbours. Then there is the internal life, where the crisis is raging, unfiltered and unshared. Maintaining the separation between these two realities creates a split in your consciousness. You have to track who knows what, ensure your facial expressions do not betray the internal state, and filter every sentence before it leaves your mouth. This constant monitoring creates a cognitive load that acts like a background application, draining the battery of a phone. You find your processing speed slowing down. You might experience brain fog, difficulty concentrating, or a loss of creativity. Over time, this accumulation of unshared data begins to physically erode you. The body keeps the score of the silence. You may develop tension headaches, jaw clenching, or inexplicable digestive issues. The backlog of unprocessed emotion does not disappear, it sedimentizes. Because you cannot selectively shut down only the bad feelings, the mechanism eventually dampens everything. The vigilance required to keep the pain hidden also keeps the joy out. You become efficient, functional, and durable, but increasingly hollow. Experiences that used to bring a spark now feel muted, viewed through a thick pane of glass. You are surviving the crisis, but you are slowly losing the ability to actually inhabit your life. The exhaustion you feel is the structural stress of a bridge carrying weight it was never engineered to hold alone. And this exhaustion is not a sign that you are failing at the strategy. It is the evidence that the strategy was never designed for long-term use. This behavior is not a personality quirk, nor is it a stubborn refusal to be helped. It is a highly sophisticated, historically successful survival algorithm. At some distinct point in your developmental timeline, your nervous system ran a calculation regarding the expression of need, and the result was negative. The equation was simple. You exposed a vulnerability, and the environment responded not with support, but with increased chaos, dismissal, or a demand that you manage the caregiver's anxiety. In psychological terms, this is the architecture of compulsive self-reliance. It typically forms in environments where the caregivers were either emotionally absent or dangerously fragile. If sharing a problem caused your parent to panic, you learned that your distress was dangerous to the system. You learned that bringing a problem to the table didn't solve it, it doubled it. You had to deal with the original issue plus the emotional deregulation of the person supposed to help you. To prevent this double cost, your brain rewired its threat response circuitry. It decoupled the instinct for co-regulation, the biological imperative to soothe fear through connection, and replaced it with auto-regulation. You learned to metabolize your own cortisol. This is a brilliant adaptation for a child in a resource-scarce emotional environment. It is a neurological firewall installed to prevent external instability from corrupting your internal processing. This mechanism relies on a predictive model called negative forecasting. Before you even consider speaking, your brain runs a millisecond simulation of the interaction. It predicts that the listener will misunderstand, minimize, or overreact. It calculates the energy required to explain the nuance, to correct their assumptions, and to manage their reaction. And it determines that the metabolic cost is too high. The return on investment for sharing is negative. Therefore, silence is not just a preference, it is an efficiency measure. You are optimizing for emotional energy conservation. However, this creates a rigid closed loop. By refusing to test the environment, you never gather new data. You act on outdated intelligence from a time when you were powerless, applying a wartime embargo to a peacetime economy. The mechanism works perfectly to keep you safe from disappointment, but it relies on a critical, unverified assumption that no one else is capable of holding the weight you carry. But if this system was built to protect you from incompetence or neglect, why does it react with equal hostility to genuine care? This is not resilience. It is a calcified defense mechanism masquerading as a personality trait. You have likely built an entire identity around being the independent one, the fixer, or the autonomous agent. You pride yourself on needing nothing. But this autonomy is not a free choice born of security. It is a forced adaptation born of necessity. True independence is the ability to stand alone. Your version is the inability to lean. It is critical to reframe this. You are not hiding your problems because you are strong. You are hiding them because, deep in your neural architecture, you have coded need as a threat. You view your own requirements for support as a liability, a toxic asset that will devalue you in the eyes of others. The silence is not a sign of your fortitude. It is a measure of your profound distrust in the capacity of the environment to sustain you. You are effectively operating as a sovereign nation in a world of alliances, refusing trade because you fear the debt. You believe that by not asking for help, you maintain control. But this is an illusion. The mechanism controls you. You are not driving the car. You are locked in the trunk, watching the scenery of your own life pass by through a pinhole, terrified that if you make a sound, the driver, the anxiety, the vulnerability, will crash the vehicle. The tragedy of this identity is that it works. It keeps you safe from rejection, safe from disappointment, and safe from being a burden. But safety is not the same as vitality. By successfully eliminating the risk of dependence, you have also eliminated the possibility of being known. You have survived, but you have done so by turning yourself into a fortress. And the problem with fortresses is that while nothing can get in, nothing can get out either. In the domain of intimacy, this mechanism creates a cruel paradox. You crave connection. It is a biological imperative, but the specific vulnerability required to achieve deep connection is the exact state your nervous system is wired to avoid. So, you engage in performative intimacy. You listen to your partner's problems, you offer support, you share high-level summaries of your day, but you withhold the granular reality of your fears. You edit your internal monologue before speaking, removing the sharp edges, the insecurities and the doubts. You offer a curated version of yourself that is easy to love because it is sanitized of need. The result is that your partner falls in love with the mask, not the man or woman behind it. You feel an increasing, haunting distance, even while lying next to them. They may feel the relationship is perfect because there is no friction, unaware that friction is a byproduct of contact. By removing the friction, you have removed the contact. You are safe from their judgment, but you are also safe from their love. You have engineered a relationship where you are essentially an administrator of their life, rather than a participant in a shared one. Shift the lens to your professional life, and the pattern repeats with higher stakes. Here, the silence masquerades as high capacity. When a project becomes unmanageable or a deadline unrealistic, you do not flag the risk. To your brain, signaling, "I cannot do this," is synonymous with signaling, "I am unsafe." So you absorb the deficit. You work late, you skip meals, you internalize the stress. You fix the broken processes silently so no one else sees the cracks. The organization rewards this. You are promoted, given more responsibility, and labeled a top performer. But this is a trap. The reward for your silent suffering is more weight. You have taught your environment that you have no breaking point, so they will continue to load you until you break. You are not climbing a ladder, you are digging a hole. And because you never asked for resources when the problem was small, asking for them now, when the stakes are high, feels like a confession of fraudulence. You are terrified that if you admit you are struggling now, it will retroactively invalidate all your past successes. This algorithm runs even deeper, into the substrate of your physical health. When your body sends pain signals, a persistent ache, a sudden dizziness, a wave of nausea, you treat them not as vital information, but as noise to be suppressed. You apply the same "don't complain" logic to your own biology. You postpone doctor appointments. You power through illness. You view your body as a machine that must be forced to comply, rather than an organism that requires care. You ignore the check engine light because you are too busy driving the car. This dissociation from somatic feedback means that when you finally do address a health issue, it is often because the body has staged a catastrophic intervention, forcing you to stop because you refused to pause. Perhaps the most dangerous manifestation occurs during times of genuine external crisis, a death in the family, a sudden accident. While others fall apart, you go into hyper-functional mode. You become the planner, the logistics manager, the shoulder to cry on. You handle the funeral arrangements, the paperwork, the emotional triage for distraught relatives. You do not cry. You do not collapse. You feel a strange, cold clarity. You tell yourself this is strength. You tell yourself you are being strong for them. But in reality, your nervous system has utilized the chaos to engage a high-level dissociation. You are deferring the grief. You put the trauma on a credit card with an exorbitant interest rate. 6 months later, when the dust settles and everyone else has processed their loss and moved on, the bill comes due. You find yourself breaking down over a dropped coffee cup or a missing set of keys, the delayed tsunami of grief finally crashing through the levees, long after the support system has dispersed. Across every domain, love, work, health, crisis, the pattern is identical. You are consistently choosing short-term control over long-term sustainability. You are prioritizing the comfort of others over your own reality. You are maintaining the structural integrity of the external world by cannibalizing your internal world. You are not just a person who doesn't share problems, you are a closed system running a program of slow, silent self-consumption. And as you look at these different areas of your life, you realize this is not a series of isolated choices, it is a geometry. You have built a cage so intricate, so functional, and so invisible that you have forgotten you hold the key. The ultimate price of this containment strategy is not paid in moments of acute failure, but in the slow, cumulative erosion of your reality. By consistently filtering your internal state, you have inadvertently engineered a life where you are technically present, but existentially absent. You have curated a user interface for the people around you, a simplified, frictionless version of yourself that is easy to interact with, but impossible to deeply know. This creates a terrifying form of cognitive dissonance. You are surrounded by people who claim to love you, yet you feel a profound, gnawing, fraudulent sensation. You know with absolute certainty that they love the performance, not the person. They love the version of you that doesn't complain, that solves problems, that remains steady. You suspect that if you were to drop the mask and reveal the trembling, overwhelmed creature beneath, their affection would curdle into confusion or repulsion. Because you never test this hypothesis, it hardens into a fact in your mind. You are loved for your utility, not your essence. Furthermore, this dynamic breeds a quiet, corrosive resentment. You begin to despise the very people you are protecting. You resent their freedom to be messy, their ease in asking for help, their oblivious reliance on your strength. You find yourself thinking, "Must I do everything?" Or, "Why does no one check on me?" But these questions are traps. You have trained them perfectly to ignore your needs. You have conditioned them to view you as a limitless resource. The resentment you feel is the exhaust fume of your own engine. It is the heat generated by a system running at redline while the vehicle remains stationary. Physiologically, the cost is quantified as allostatic load, the wear and tear on the body which grows over time when the individual is exposed to repeated or chronic stress. Your nervous system never fully downregulates. You are in a permanent state of yellow alert, scanning for threats and suppressing reactions. This manifests as a brittleness. You become rigid. Your capacity for joy, spontaneity, and play evaporates because those states require a surrender of control, and control is the only thing keeping the floodgates closed. You have purchased safety, yes. You have avoided the danger of dependency, but the currency you used to pay for it was your own aliveness. You have built a life that is sustainable only as long as you do not inhabit it fully. You are the architect of a beautiful, sturdy house that you are forced to stand outside of, watching through the windows as others make themselves at home in the warmth you provide, but cannot access. You have secured the perimeter, but the interior is empty. The tragedy is not that you are alone. It is that you have made yourself unreachable. There is no sudden epiphany that dissolves this structure. You cannot simply decide to dismantle a defense mechanism that has kept you alive for decades. Your nervous system has poured concrete over these pathways, and to chip away at them feels less like healing and more like a violation of your own safety protocols. To speak when every fibre of your biology screams for silence is an act of rebellion against your own history. You may find yourself standing at the edge of a conversation, feeling the familiar weight in your chest, the words forming and then dissolving before they reach your tongue. That is not failure. That is the mechanism doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is a loyalty to a past version of yourself that needed to stay hidden to survive. You are operating on a map of a territory that no longer exists, navigating a peacetime world with wartime logic. The silence you keep is not empty. It is full of everything you have protected others from. It is a heavy, solitary inheritance. But as you sit with this realization, a new, unsettling question begins to form in the quiet. It is not about how to fix it or what steps to take next. It is a simpler, more terrifying inquiry into the nature of the weight you carry. If you were to finally set it down, if you were to let the walls crack just enough to let the light in, would the structure actually collapse? Or is that just another story the silence tells you to keep you alone? The door is locked from the inside, and you are the only one with the hand on the latch.